Hey, this is Chuck from Monocoque Metalworks. We've got the car pushed out today. It's early November. I've been doing a lot of work on this through October for the final push to get this old girl running again. And so the car's outside today because we want to do a couple of last minute housekeeping items. We're gonna put some fuel in it for the first time. Remember, we cleaned out the gas tank. It's been a while now, but that's all cleaned out. The fuel pump was rebuilt, and the carburetors and all of that were rebuilt too. But the only thing that hasn't been cleaned or cleaned out is the metal line that goes from the rear bulkhead over here up to the sediment bowl fuel filter on the firewall. So we're gonna put a couple gallons in here, we're gonna run the fuel pump, and we're gonna pump fresh gas through there, see what comes out, see if anything comes out, and hopefully it'll clear that out. Now, that being said, the battery's all done, so the battery's in place. It's been hooked up. We're gonna put that last terminal on and go ahead and turn the ignition on and use that to run that fuel pump. So we're gonna be running some electricals for the first time. Now, that being said, we're gonna pull the plugs out. I'm gonna vacuum out that number 4 cylinder one last time. I cleaned out the shop vac and it's sucking a lot better now. So I'm just gonna give that one last suck and make sure there's nothing in there. And then after that, we're gonna have all those plugs out. I'm gonna put some rags in the valley there so we don't make a mess, and we're gonna see if this starter works and try to crank that over. And then if we've got some time left this afternoon, we're gonna fill up the cooling system just with water, because we're probably gonna have to flush this out several times and make sure there's not any more crud in there. But we're gonna try to fill that up with water, make sure we don't have any leaks on any of our new hose connections. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, what I didn't tell you guys before was that when I hooked up the battery, it was on. I'm not used to this steering lock ignition, and that was on so that the steering column wasn't locked. And as soon as I touched the battery terminals, the fuel pump went brrr, so I know that is working. This was bone dry. So just that quick little bit of blasting air through the fuel pump, because all those lines are dry and clear, it pumped something out of that metal line into here, and I just now noticed this. Now what we're gonna do is pull this fitting off and stick a rubber hose on there and pump all of this down into a bucket. But this is great news, because that means that although I'm sure it's bad and it's 50 years old, there's liquid in that line and not some coagulated junk like was in the gas tank. Things are looking up. Okay, you can see I've got the battery all hooked up. It's back in there. This is the exact same size as the battery that came out of there, except it's a 1/2 inch taller. These are the original battery terminals. The screws that were in them were not correct. They had been replaced at some point. These are original Jag screws, I think from something else, but they very closely approximated what was in there. And so that's what is going back in there. So let me go ahead and hook this up now. Okay. I hate this gas can.
Okay.
Okay, time to put some gas in. We're both laughing because I hate this gas can. This is the gas can for the lawnmower around here. All my good gas cans are at the shop. So we're gonna go ahead and put gas in this car for the first time in 52 years. And hopefully it doesn't just pour out onto the ground. So we're just gonna put a little bit in, and then make sure the sump's not leaking, and then just take this one step at a time. Okay, we've got the boot open and we're checking for leaks. As you can see, I have not cleaned the boot out yet. I got the rest of my life to do that. Right now, we're just focusing on getting it running. So You already saw in a previous episode, I rebuilt the original fuel pump, and there it is. So we just need to make sure that none of these little fittings are leaking. And all of those banjo bolts have been left the way they were. You can see that one was perfect. This one over here was rusted. And these up here are kind of a combo of the two. So we're getting ready to go ahead and turn the fuel pump on. Okay, I've got my handy dandy Dunkin' Donuts container here, and we are going to go ahead and turn on the ignition for the first time, and it should start pumping. Cooper, are you ready?
Yeah.
All right, go ahead and hit the ignition.
Okay.
Keep going.
Okay.
So okay, as you can see, several things happened. I guess the horns worked to some degree. We did get some pumping. There's the fuel. It's kind of crummy looking, although, you know, we put some new fuel in there, so it should start washing through. I'm a little excited. Things are happening. But we got to maybe see about this horn problem. So hang on. Okay, we're just pumping clean gas through. And so that's why this is just ticking and not stopping. Cooper, go ahead and stick your finger on it. See, there you go. All right, so the fuel pump is working properly. And we have no leaks. Okay, we've pumped about 3 gallons of gas through, and we have gone ahead and hooked the fuel filter back up. Okay, now, when we were messing around with the fuel pump, I think when Cooper turned the ignition over to the start mode here on this German steering column lock, that's when the horn started going crazy and all that. The horn's not doing that anymore, so maybe the horn relay was stuck or something and it unjammed itself. But we've tried to hit the start mode. There's a spring-loaded start mode there, and we heard some clicking, but nothing else. So I guess we're going to try now to put that ignition there in the on ignition position, and then I'll go ahead and turn this key on. You can see I've already turned it, and I'll try this starter button. I don't have a lot of high hopes. I think I heard the solenoid just clicking before, but let's see what happens. It worked! I did not expect that. Good thing you got the video on. Okay. Woo! Okay. That was a shock. I thought I heard it clicking before when you had turned that extra thing. All right, well, the starter works. Let me regroup here and maybe get the barking dog out of the background. Woo-hoo! Okay, time to go ahead and put the water in. I've got the petcocks closed on the radiator and the block. Hopefully I won't spill too much of this. And then we'll just push this old girl in for the night and see if we got any leaks around the various hose connections. Need a little more water. So far, so good. I don't see anything coming out anywhere. I haven't managed to spill any either yet. All right. To be continued. Looks like we got a problem right in here somewhere. Which is very mysterious because well, as you can see, we are draining the system now. We have a leak in the radiator, which is very mysterious because I tested the radiator on a bench, and you might have seen that whole previous episode, and it seemed leak-free. But now that it's standing up straight and back in here, it looks like maybe there's a leak where one of the tubes meets the tank over on the left-hand side. So I'm not quite sure what we're going to do there. I need to think about that. But that ends it for today with our prep work. You see, we had some excitement and some happy things and some disappointments. But we will keep pushing through here. Okay, before we can try to crank her up, we've got to do a few preliminary tasks. And one of the things is to hook the battery up and go ahead and put this screw back in there. So that is step one. Okay, next we're going to put the plugs back in and we're going to crank this over and see if the starter has enough power to crank it over strongly under compression, which hopefully we have some compression. Before we do that, since this is the first time these pistons are going to be going up and down fast, I just want to throw a little more Marvel Mystery Oil in there. I know you've seen me throw a ton in there, but I just want this to be nice and wet and lubricated for that rapid turnover. So, got my funnel, got my handy little shaving cup thing here, and I'm going to go ahead and put a little in each cylinder. Just putting the plugs back in, and then we'll see about cranking her over. Hopefully, it'll go off without too much trouble. Be very careful. Make sure you always use a spark plug socket so you don't snap one of these off, which is a lot easier than you would think. Okay.
Go.
Okay, now we're going to turn on the ignition, and then I'm going to check to see if we've got power to the coil. Now, there's kind of a question about whether or not... See, that definitely turns on the ignition. I'm not sure if this one here does anything or not. I was going to drop down the center dash, but she's just bumping into this radio console, which is just kind of sitting in there. And I don't want to break this original thing here. Actually, it already has a little piece broken off here, but I have the piece. But anyway, it was in the glove box. We got it. So let's come over here and see if we've got power to the coil. Here's the test light. We should have power right here. And we do. Excellent. This is looking good. Okay. Now, I want to crank the starter over and make sure that the starter has got enough power to really crank this thing over so we can start it. We know the starter works from our little surprise last week. Not really sure if I want to keep the ignition hooked up or not, but we've never put oil into the car. Sorry, not oil. We've never put fuel into the carbs. We've only pumped fuel up to the sediment bowl here, and now it's drained. So, shouldn't start. So let's go ahead and see if this thing will crank over in rapid fire here. I guess I'm going to go ahead and turn this ignition on. I'm going to turn this on. All right. I'm getting kind of excited. Unless Marvel Mystery Oil will combust, we'll see how this goes. All right. Sounds like she's got compression. I think this is going to work. All right. That's working. All right. Hang on. I think I want to stick a timing light on it and see if that's working. Stand by. Okay, now I'm going to crank it over again with the ignition on. I've got this timing light plugged in. She's been around the block a few times. I'm just going to see if I get a strobe here. We're not getting a strobe. So we're going to have to kind of debug that problem. The coil that's on here is vintage. It could be bad. So let's check that out. All right, well, we've hit a bit of a snag. We are just not getting any spark. And it seems that maybe I messed up something when I rebuilt the distributor. It seems like the line going from the coil, not the main coil wire, but the smaller line that goes from the negative side of the coil over into the distributor, that kind of seems to be grounded out. So I'm going to pop the distributor back out of here and get it on a bench and see what I can see there. It looks like maybe there's some kind of ground happening on that post where you run everything, where the points and the condenser go in and all. So for now, we're going to stop. You can see we put the coil from the 2+2 that's behind us in there, didn't get any change. So I thought maybe that other coil was bad. But anyway, to be continued. For you, it'll probably be 2 seconds till the next thing happens. But for us, I think we're done for today, and we'll see if we can mess with that distributor tonight. Well, as predicted, it's been exactly a week since I was just here. Pulled the distributor out. It did have a problem with the way that I reassembled it when I rebuilt it a month or so ago. That little post where the point spring goes together with the little contact for the condenser, I had screwed that up. I didn't have the wires insulated, so it was all grounded out. So I pulled it out, fixed that problem, put it all back in there. That's all good. We did hook up the vacuum advance line. You remember I had broken that little piece of vacuum tubing. That wasn't supposed to be on there. Originally it had a little elbow, and I found one of those at the shop, put that on there, so that's all good. Then we did go ahead and pull the plugs again, put a little bit of Marble Mystery oil in there for our retest today, and then while we had the plugs out, we turned the engine until it was right there at 10 degrees before top dead center on the mark down there. Check to make sure our number 6 is pointing to the right wire. That is good. We checked the continuity on all the wires, which is a teeny tiny bit of resistance in a couple of them, but otherwise, that's good. And I had retested this all last week when I fixed the distributor. The coil from April of '66 is working. It was strobing, so we're all good. We've hooked the battery back up, and the plugs are back in. And what we've got to do next is go ahead and turn the ignition on, plug the fuel pump back in after we go ahead and put some gas in. So it's a little bit of a dreary day today. Before we push this out, we are going to go ahead and test that fuel system and make sure we don't have any leaks in the carbs. And then we're going to push it out and give her a go. Okay, we're just doing our due diligence on the timing. So we are now set at 10 degrees before top dead center on number 6, which is the front cylinder, and that's how you time these cars. So that is all set. You might remember when I pulled the distributor out, I mentioned that that little piece of vacuum hose going from the copper line to the vacuum advance unit was broke when I pulled it out. But then I realized it's not supposed to have a piece of vacuum hose. It's supposed to have one of these little rubber elbows. And I was super excited to find this at the shop, which is an original. As you can see, it's rock hard. It's not very rubbery, but it's still intact. I couldn't get it on a vacuum advance unit at the shop, so I just kind of gently drilled it out to the right size by just twisting a drill in there by hand. And it's a nice snug fit now. So this is going back on there just like it had coming out of the factory. All right, there it is in place. You see that copper line's a little clean back because that vacuum hose was really on there. Just try to get it focused. But there it is. Cooper is out front blowing the pine needles and the water off the driveway because it rained last night. This is still the brown distributor cap that was put on there back when the car was running. I left that. It looks brand new. We're going to leave that for now. It's interesting that this number 6 wire has this yellow like crayon on it. That almost looks like a factory deal. But that's number 6. So everything is good to go with the distributor. You see there's a little leak there where it was leaking out of the thermostat housing, but I tightened that up, so we are good to go. Okay, put a couple gallons of gas in, fuel, whatever you want to call it. You remember a couple weeks ago, we filled up the tank and we checked that all for leaks. We checked the pump and we pumped fresh gas, about 3 gallons of it, through to the fuel filter sediment bowl here and got that all cleaned out. So we now, and we pumped it all out so it was dry. So I just put a couple more gallons in. We're going to turn the key on. I've plugged the fuel pump back in. And we are going to pump gas through here and fill up the carbs. Now, when we first turn the key, it'll be pumping like crazy, and then it should gradually go like that, meaning everything's full, it's pressurized, and it's not leaking out. Or it could just keep going and pump fuel all over the floor. I don't know, but you're going to find out with me. So, here goes. I'm going to go ahead and turn on the key. I've already turned on this key. I'm still not sure if that does anything on this German car. All right. We're pumping. We are now, come on around here. It's filling up the bowl. Just filled the bowl. We're going into the carbs. Yep. You hear that? Fuel is coming out onto the floor. So we probably got a stuck needle and seat coming out of one of these overflow tubes. Can't really see the bottom of the tubes. But that's what happens. Oh boy. Put a lot of gas down there. All right, so time to debug and see what's happening next. But it looks like we've got a stuck needle and seat or something. And we're definitely pumping out of one of those overflow tubes. So stay tuned. Okay, I think we're ready. It was leaking like a sieve out of the sediment bowl here, the fuel filter. Still had the original gasket in it. I kind of thought that wouldn't work, and it didn't. It was rock hard. So we replaced that with a little gasket that we made out of cork. And then it was coming out of one of these carbs here through the overflow. And I put a rag on and gently tapped each one. And I think just them sitting there dry for a year and then kind of getting the fuel gushing through, they seem to be okay now too. So let's go ahead and give it one more shot here. I will turn the ignition on. We should get a couple clicks and then it'll stop. That's what we're looking for. Hopefully that you heard that on the tape, but it went brrr, and as you can see, nothing's clicking now. So we're ready to go. The next episode is the big test.